I know what it is to have your love turned into a ledger, to be valued not for your heart, but for what your hands can provide. This is for every woman who has been a bank first and a daughter second, who has learned that sometimes the most sacred thing you can build is not a bridge, but a wall. If you've ever had to bury the person they thought you were just to let yourself breathe, this is your story. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Let me know I'm not screaming into the void alone. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's past midnight here, the world outside is hushed, and the deepest truths always seem to surface in these quiet, dark hours. Let's begin. The envelope was thick, cream, and heavy with implication. It should have felt like an achievement. Instead, as I held the official confirmation of my tenure at the university, the paper seemed to suck the warmth from my fingers. I'd done it. 7 years of grinding research, of publishing while teaching, of smiling until my cheeks ached at faculty parties I was never really invited to, just tolerated at. Dr. Alara Thorne, Associate Professor of Environmental Ethics. A title earned with sweat and silence. I placed it on my kitchen counter, next to the empty wine glass and the wilting peace lily my sister had given me as a "congrats on the promotion I know you'll get" gift a month ago. The silence in my condo was a living thing. I should have called someone. My mother. My sister. But the thought of dialing that number felt like reaching into a cage. The call came, of course. Not to congratulate me. The universe, or at least my family, has a relentless sense of ironic timing. My phone buzzed, the screen flashing "Mom" with a cheerful persistence that felt like a taunt. Alara, finally. I've been calling. Her voice was a melody of mild exasperation, a tune I'd danced to since childhood. I just got in, I said, my eyes on the envelope. Well, listen. We have a situation. Sasha's wedding planner has just quit. Absolutely unprofessional, left her in the lurch 3 months before the date. It's a disaster. Sasha. My younger sister. The event of the century. I felt my shoulders creep towards my ears. That's terrible, Mom. I'm sure she'll find someone else. She has, my mother said, and the pause that followed was a bottomless pit. You. A laugh, sharp and involuntary, escaped me. I'm not a wedding planner. I'm an ethicist. I teach college students about moral philosophy. I don't know the first thing about floral arrangements or seating charts. Don't be silly, Alara. You're organized. You're good with details. And this is family. Sasha is devastated. This is her dream. You wouldn't let your sister's dream fall apart over a little inconvenience, would you? The manipulation was so classic, so polished, it was almost art. A little inconvenience. I looked at the tenure letter, the culmination of my dream, lying ignored. Mom, I just got tenure. This semester is swamped. I have a book chapter due. And you'll manage. Family comes first. Always. The finality in her voice was a slamming door. We've already told the venue coordinator you'll be taking over. She's expecting your call tomorrow. Sasha will send you all the files. We're counting on you, sweetheart. The line went dead. Sweetheart. The word echoed in the hollow space she'd carved in my chest. I stood there, in the middle of my clean, quiet, hard-won space, and felt the old, familiar cords of obligation wrap around my ankles, my wrists, my throat. I had spent a decade building a life of the mind, a life of principles, only to be reduced, in an instant, to an administrative assistant for my sister's fairy tale. The injustice of it was a hot, metallic taste on my tongue. But the habit of compliance was a deep, worn groove in my psyche. I opened my laptop. The email from Sasha was already there, a zip file labeled "Wedding, Urgent." With a sigh that came from the marrow of my bones, I double-clicked. What followed was a descent into a particular kind of madness. My days became a hellish double life. Mornings were spent lecturing on Kant's categorical imperative, afternoons in frantic meetings with bakers who debated the moral weight of buttercream versus fondant with less nuance than my freshmen. My nights were consumed by spreadsheets, guest lists, vendor contacts, timelines. Sasha's vision was rustic chic, which translated to a bottomless pit of expensive, artfully distressed details. My mother's role was that of a benign dictator, swooping in with vetoes and new, costly demands. Sasha only gets married once, Alara. We have to make it perfect. The we was a fiction. The making it perfect was my burden, and the paying for it was increasingly, mysteriously, becoming my problem. It started small. Alara, can you just put the deposit on your card? Your father's tied up some funds in a short-term investment. $1,000 for the photographer. Then, the florist needs the balance, darling. We'll square up with you next week. 2,500. The squaring up never came. Instead, it was met with a vague, "Oh, let's just call it your wedding gift to Sasha. She'll be so touched." My objections were gently, firmly steamrolled. Don't be transactional, Alara. This is about love. About family. But my bank account was brutally transactional. My savings, meticulously saved for a sabbatical research trip to Iceland, began to evaporate. The numbers on my screen told a cold story of betrayal, line by line. I was drowning in a sea of tulle and twinkle lights, and my family was holding my head under, calling it a celebration. The breaking point, when it came, was not a dramatic shattering, but a quiet, seismic shift deep within. It was a Tuesday. I was in my office, surrounded by the comforting smell of old books and dust, trying to finish a peer review. My phone buzzed. A notification from my bank. A large purchase was flagged for potential fraud. My heart stuttered. I logged in, fingers clumsy. There it was. A charge for $8,500. From Piedmont Jewelers. I knew with a cold, sick certainty. Sasha's wedding bands. The ones she'd shown me, tears in her eyes, saying, "Aren't they perfect? But they're so far over budget." I had murmured something sympathetic, never imagining I was the new budget line. I called my mother. This time, my voice didn't waver. It was flat dead. The charge from Piedmont Jewelers. Explain it. A beat of silence. Then, her laugh, light and tinkling. Oh, that. Sasha fell in love with them. She was heartbroken. What was I supposed to do? You know how she gets. You used my card. Without asking. Asking? Alara, really. It's for your sister's wedding. It's practically for you too. This day is a reflection on our whole family. We couldn't have her settling for less. We'll figure it out later. There is no later, I said, the words clean and sharp as a scalpel. You have 24 hours to return the rings or put the money back in my account. Or I will report it as fraud. The gasp on the other end was theatrical. You wouldn't dare. The scandal. At Sasha's wedding? You'd ruin her big day over money. It's not money, I whispered. It's my life. And you're stealing it. I hung up. I didn't cry. I felt a strange, crystalline clarity. I opened a new document on my computer. At the top, I typed, Operations Log, Reclamation. And I began to plan. The first move was defensive. I canceled the compromised card, ordered a new one sent to a P.O. box. I changed all my passwords, put alerts on my social security number. I called the bank, explained the situation in calm, precise terms. The fraud agent, a woman named Linda with a soothing voice, listened. I'm sorry you're dealing with this, Dr. Thorne. Family can be the hardest kind of fraud to prove. But she helped me set up new, secret security questions, ones my mother could never guess. I built a digital fortress, brick by brick. But defense wasn't enough. Justice, I was beginning to understand, required a strategy. I needed evidence, and I needed to understand the full scope of the theft. I started recording every conversation. Washington State was a one-party consent haven, and for the first time, the law felt like a shield. I called my mother back, my voice artificially conciliatory. Mom, I'm sorry I snapped. The stress is getting to me. Let's talk about the wedding finances. I need to understand so I can plan. The trap was baited with my familiar compliance. She took it eagerly. For an hour, she talked, her voice a stream of justifications and subtle threats. You know Sasha's mental health is fragile. Your father would be so disappointed if we caused a rift. After all we've done for you, the least you can do, I recorded it all. The damning admission about the jewelry charge was there, wrapped in velvet guilt. We only wanted what was best, and your card was just there. I began a forensic audit of my own life. I combed through years of bank statements, cataloging every loan that was never repaid, every gift that was actually an obligation. I found old emails requesting money for property taxes, for car repairs, for Sasha's emergency trips to spas after breakups. The total was staggering. Over the past 10 years, they had siphoned off over $60,000. My Iceland fund, my dream of a down payment on a small house, my financial security, all fed into the bottomless maw of their entitlement. The anger was no longer a hot rage, it was a cold, focused engine. My revenge would not be a shout, but a silence. Not a confrontation, but an eviction. I would not scream. I would simply remove the ground from beneath their feet. The wedding was to be held at the Orchard Hill Estate, a venue of manicured lawns and obscene price tags. My mother had booked it, putting down a massive deposit she later confessed came from a little advance on my line of credit. I was the contact for everything now, the point person for all vendors. A position of servitude I turned into a position of power. I began, slowly, subtly, to alter the plans. Not enough to be noticed immediately, but enough to weave a web of exquisite, public consequence. I called the caterer. My sister has developed a severe, last-minute allergy to shellfish and nuts. It's touch and go. The entire menu must be free of any trace. This is a matter of safety. The fancy, pre-planned salmon and almond-crusted canapés were scrapped for a bland, vastly more expensive bespoke menu. I reconfirmed the order for the champagne toast, tripling the quantity. We've had a huge surge in RSVPs, I told the sommelier, my voice dripping with faux stress. Family from out of the country. We must accommodate. I saved the masterstroke for the week of the wedding. The wedding dress. Sasha's priceless, custom-designed gown had arrived at the boutique for final alterations. I went for the final fitting as the dutiful sister. While Sasha preened before the mirror, a vision of satin and self-absorption, I took the manager aside. There's been a sensitive family situation, I murmured, my face a mask of concerned confidentiality. The groom's family are very traditional. They find the current neckline a bit too modern. For family harmony, we need to make an adjustment. Can you modify it to something more conservative? A high-lace collar, perhaps? Money is no object. I handed over my mother's credit card number, which I had conveniently stored for emergency wedding expenses. The alteration was a complex, costly rebuild of the dress's bodice. It would be ready the morning of the wedding. Sasha would have no choice but to wear it. The day before the wedding dawned bright and cruel. The family was at the venue for the rehearsal. My mother was in her element, directing everyone with the fervor of a general. My father was a silent, smiling ghost in the corner. Sasha was a bundle of thrilled nerves. I was calm. I had done my work. The rehearsal dinner was a lavish affair at an expensive downtown restaurant. My father gave a speech about family, about bonds that never break. I smiled and sipped my water. As the desserts were cleared, I stood up, tapping my knife gently against my glass. The room quieted, faces turning to me with expectant, slightly patronizing smiles. I just wanted to say a few words, I began, my voice soft, clear. This wedding has been a labor of love. Truly. I've learned so much about what family means. I looked at my mother, holding her gaze. I've learned that it means sacrifice. That it means giving until you have nothing left and then being asked to give more. I've learned that your dreams are only valid if they serve the family narrative. I've learned that you can be loved conditionally, based entirely on your utility. The smiles were freezing, cracking. My mother's eyes widened in warning. So tonight, I continued, I'm making my final contribution to Sasha's big day. I'm giving you all a gift. The gift of truth. I reached into my bag and pulled out a stack of envelopes. I walked around the table, placing one before my mother, my father, Sasha. In there, you will find an itemized statement. Every dollar taken from me over the last decade. Loans for cars that were never repaid. My credit card used for your vacations. The $8,500 for the wedding rings you never asked to borrow. The total, with a modest interest rate, comes to $71,432. The silence was absolute, a physical weight. You will also find a legally drafted repayment plan, I said. and a copy of the police report I filed this afternoon for identity theft and fraud, referencing the recorded calls where you, Mom, admit to using my financial information without permission. The detective was very understanding. My mother's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. You vile, ungrateful little. The venue is paid for, I talked over her, my voice still calm. The vendors are all confirmed. The show will go on tomorrow. But it will be the last thing you ever get from me. After this, we are done. The debt is owed to me. You can pay it, or you can explain to your friends, to the community, to Sasha's new in-laws, why you are being taken to court. Your choice. I didn't wait for the explosion. I turned and walked out of the restaurant, the stunned silence shattering behind me into a cacophony of shouts and sobs. The cool night air hit me like a baptism. I didn't look back. The wedding day was a masterpiece of schadenfreude, observed from a distance. My phone, turned off, was locked in a drawer. I spent the day at the art museum, wandering quiet galleries, feeling the ghost of my old self re-inhabit my bones. I imagined the scenes unfolding. Sasha, discovering her altered, matronly gown and screaming the boutique down, but with no time to change. My mother, trying to maintain her poise while fielding calls from irate vendors presenting invoices double what she'd budgeted, all billed to her personal cards. The shellfish-free, nut-free menu confusing and disappointing the guests. The obscene surplus of champagne leading to a drunken, messy reception. And underlying it all, the whispered scandal, spreading like wildfire through the tables. The police report, the debts, the elder daughter's very public severance. I learned the details later from a gossipy acquaintance who couldn't resist sending me a play-by-play. The wedding had been, by all accounts, a beautiful disaster. The photos, when they surfaced on social media, showed Sasha looking stiff and unhappy in her high-necked gown, my mother's smile brittle enough to shatter, my father looking lost. The piece de resistance came during the father-daughter dance. As my father and Sasha shuffled across the floor, a uniformed officer had appeared discreetly at the edge of the dance floor, waiting to speak to my parents about the official report. He didn't interrupt, just stood there, a silent, blue-clad specter at the feast. The image, captured in the background of a dozen guests' photos, was more damning than any confrontation. The fallout was nuclear. In the small, judgmental world of their social circle, my mother was finished. The illusion of the perfect family was vaporized. Sasha's new in-laws, wealthy and image-conscious, were horrified. Rumors swirled. The bank, alerted to the fraudulent use of my line of credit, launched its own investigation, freezing my parents' assets pending review. The repayment plan I'd sent became a grim necessity, not an option. They had to take out a loan against their house to pay me back and cover the wedding's catastrophic overages. Sasha's marriage started on a foundation of gossip and debt. I received the final wire transfer, the full amount, one rainy afternoon 8 months later. No note. No apology. Just a notification from my bank. I closed my operations log, reclamation file. It was over. I used the money to book that research trip to Iceland. I stood on a black sand beach, the wind screaming off the North Atlantic, and felt a quiet so profound it was like a sound all its own. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of me. I returned to a life that was truly mine. My tenure was secure, my work fulfilling. I bought a small, old cottage with a view of towering fir trees, not for anyone's approval, but because I loved the light in the kitchen. One evening, as I was unpacking a box of books, I found a small, worn notebook from my childhood. Flipping through it, I found a list in my adolescent handwriting, dreams. Most were silly. But one line read, "A home that is quiet and all mine." I framed that page of the notebook. I hung it beside my tenure certificate. 2 testaments to different kinds of victory. My father emailed me a year later. A short, broken message. Alara. I have left her. I am living in an apartment. It is very quiet. I am trying to learn how to listen to it. I am so sorry I never listened to you. I don't expect a reply. I just needed you to know I see it now. I see you. I read it as the first snow of winter fell silently outside my cottage window. I felt a pang, not of longing for what was, but of grief for what could never have been. I did not reply. Some bridges, once burned, reveal they were only ever cages made of rope. I made tea, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and watched the snow blanket the world in a clean, forgiving white. The quiet in my home was deep and complete. It was not the silence of abandonment, but the silence of sanctuary. It was the sound of a door closed, a lock engaged, a boundary finally, blessedly holding. It was the sound of my own breath, my own heart, my own unchained life, stretching out into the peaceful dark. And in that quiet, I was finally and utterly free.